Hi, everybody. I really appreciate the opportunity of attending once again the SCI Investors Forum. I'm Barry Munro. I am the treasurer of the North American SCI Consortium. You might remember me last year presenting with Linda Jones on this great new initiative that we had embarked on, looking at how we can put together a patient-focused drug development program that the FDA holds as a formal way of really gauging the community and understanding what it is that our needs are. And so just as a recap, we created what is called the SCI Perspectives Initiative. It's called the SCI PI. Next slide, please. And in that, the FDA we really were responding to what the FDA had created in its PFDD initiative to systematically incorporate lived experience perspectives into medical product review. And really, we looked at the historical problem of not understanding the priorities of the community and conditions in general. That's what the FDA was doing and looking at it. They hear a lot anecdotally, but they don't necessarily know formally what it is the people of a certain condition and that community really wants done with them when it comes to drug development. So they recognize the need to include this and really input both patients and care partners into its regulatory decision-making. And I make it very clear that when they looked at this problem, they also wanted to know that through the process that they can systematically collect this information and really understand the perspective and the representation of the community by doing this. So the solution they came up with was in 2012, they created the FDA PFDD initiative. And really, that's a method of the agency really coming together and understanding the conditions of the community. So they piloted 24 condition-specific public meetings. So that means they did 24 of these things in-house. And they really looked at the most bothersome symptoms of a condition and how it affected daily life and the experiences with current treatments, as well as preferences and trade-offs. And it was originally organized and put together by the FDA and led by the FDA. Next slide. What they found, though, eventually, that it was overwhelmingly successful, but it took a lot of resources. So then they embarked on really understanding and building this program into a more fulsome way. So the FDA as a stakeholder, they basically, if you look at it, this is how it went before and after a PFDD. You know, there was no systematic representation and way of gathering lived experience. Then after a PFDD, they've really created a structured, credible model for incorporating lived experience in the regulatory review. And then when it came to us, people with spinal cord injuries, we look at it as a form of prior to a PFDD, which is where we are right now, that we have limited influence over the outcomes and experiences of the priorities of what our community wants compared to what the FDA thinks we want formally. And now it's our hope that after a PFDD, a formal role in shaping how an SCI treatment benefits, burdens, and priorities are defined could come out of that. But more importantly, it really looks at taking the lived experience, but really influencing medical product developers. Because right now, they work with what they think they know, and they develop the goals for the patient care and partners as priorities, what they think they are. But with the PFDD, it gives a more formal, structured, and exhaustive way of really understanding what the true endpoints are needed for us to be successful and have great treatments for us as people with spinal cord injuries. Next slide. You know, when we talk about the PFDD, I think we like to use different examples of success. I lean mainly on one that we talk about a lot. There's been many great successes where the best example would be sickle cell disease. And as you can see in the disease background, really, it's a group of disorders caused by red blood cells to contort into sickle shape. The cells die early, leaving a shortage of healthy red blood cells and can block the blood flow, causing pain. So before a PFDD, for decades, sickle cell had only one approved agent and it was a repurposed cancer drug. And 30% of sickle cell clinical trials failed. And so when a trial fails, a lot of the times it is because they're not quite in sync with the community and what the community wants, or frankly, how the clinical trial should be set up, and understanding the priorities of the community and the community's interest and their condition better, they also have better success of setting up a drug trial. And that's important because in this process of looking at the patient needs or the needs of the community and their priorities, you'll also be able to gauge the condition itself and understand the many factors that influence our lives. And that's important for pharma to understand, that when they come to putting together a clinical trial, that they have that opportunity to really understand the community and the condition. And so then 5 years following sickle cell and their PFDD, the FDA approved 3 different drugs. And there's right away, there's a result after a PFDD for the expansion of drug agents going out to help people with sickle cell. So that is one case of an example of what a PFDD can do. Go on the next slide, please. So just again, to really mark how a PFDD for SCI will improve patient outcomes and drive investment, I'll just walk you through really the 6 major steps that we think that have of a great opportunity for a PFDD. First of all, we think right now that the SCI development is stalled in a current situation that we do not feel that there's enough happening in drug development for people with spinal cord injuries. Yet, 9 out of 10 U.S. adults surveyed with spinal cord injury really want to be more involved in setting research priorities. And 8 out of 10 feel that they're left out of the process. So that's important for us to know. And that we think that there's been important advocacy work to date. There are not enough coordinated mechanisms to integrate the preferences of people with research development and evaluation of interventions. So the problem is still there. These shortcomings lead to a gap between what people with SCI and what the actions of the decisions maker make. There's a disconnect. And an effective and well-represented SCI PFDD could give us the opportunity for stakeholders to hear from people living with SCI and incorporate their input into a regulatory research and medical product development. The PFDD for SCI will help improve patient outcomes and drive investment into SCI development. And frankly, there's our theme. It will drive investment. It really will, because by expanding those outcomes, it also de-risks some of the investment in SCI, and more importantly, provide us with options and, frankly, some drug agents that could help our condition and the various secondary complications that we suffer from with SCI. Next slide, please. So to take us back a year, when we were talking to you last year, we were about to embark on what we can do and how we can maybe move this process a little bit further along. And so the decision was made by creating the SCI PI, which we put together. But really, we wanted to start out with a white paper that would really kind of grasp whether or not we should move forward, and really establishing what the needs of the community are, and whether we're in that position that we can embark on this journey. And we were so fortunate to have the support and really the driving force financially and from a resource point of view, the Spinal Cord Outcomes Partnership Endeavor, SCOPE, which is an adjunct of the American Spinal Injury Association. But these people are well represented from industry and research to really look at how we can move forward and better research for spinal cord injury. But they do realize, too, that in the whole spirit of a PFDD, and especially just in principle, that they needed a voice of the patient community. So they came to us at the North American SCI Consortium and looked at how we can work together and move forward with what we've created now, this white paper called Embracing the Voices of Persons Affected by Spinal Cord Injury, a roadmap to addressing unmet needs through patient-focused drug development. So this white paper has now been completed. It has now been published. And it was informed by interviews with leading researchers, practitioners, regulatory specialists, and provide a lot of guidance in moving forward on this approach. Next slide. The white paper really made some recommendations. And number one was to align stakeholders and major SCI stakeholders in terms of putting together a coalition of organizations to lead it forward. And that's where we are now. It was to define meeting priorities using existing patient preference research and new surveys. So a lot of work has been done in the past in discussion and looking at the priorities work since the Anderson paper of 2004. And we really thought we would build upon that as opposed to reinventing the wheel. And then the idea was to plan inclusively to ensure the diverse representation across racial, ethnic, geographical, and socioeconomical functional backgrounds. We wanted to make sure that we captured all the voices in our community so that nobody was left out, and setting up a process that would do that too. And then, of course, engage the regulators and industry. This meant looking at industry is sort of obviously the pharma and the researchers and the clinicians, but we wanted to look to with the FDA and how it could be formalized and captured within the PFDD program. Next slide. So here we are. It all starts with a letter of intent, and we created the white paper, and with the formal start of the FDA, we've now begun. We basically have submitted a letter of intent, and this is where you formally reach out to the FDA and say, we want to go down this road and we want to be part of this process. Then when we submitted this in May of just this last month, we look at waiting for a result that will be on a quarterly basis. They review the LOIs, and we hopefully will hear from them in July or August. And once they accept it, if they do, then we are now on the road and the clock starts ticking on a journey to create a PFDD. So the proposed meeting would be virtually, it's going to be in a virtual meeting in June of 2026. We've got a meeting moderator in James Valentine, who's an expert in this regulatory field and is responsible for over 75% of the PFDDs. We will then seek out SCI community hosts, clinical experts, and we would then put together a sharper and proposed meeting scope of that. Now, we talk about a meeting per se, and it culminates in a meeting like a Congress, as opposed when bringing all these voices together. But really, it's a process that takes all year long leading up to it through many virtual filming, taping, and interviews that get us to the point where we want to be at the end of the day. Next slide. Here's a bit of a timeline. If you can see that right now, it's and you can see how the year could fill up pretty quickly. So we basically have to submit the LOI. Well, the big thing is we do need to raise the funds, and I'll get to that in a minute. We then look at the production company that would put together the filming, and they run this event much like it looks like a infomercial / telethon coming together. It's a full day meeting that's all televised, but it allows us the opportunity to have a lot of pre-interviews done that are pre-taped to understand people's preferences and what the priorities they feel there are. It also has panel discussions that are live, and then we have some presentations by clinicians and also people with lived experience. And then it's a Zoom format so that people can phone in or call in or type in, both chat and come in live and ask questions to the panel or make some comments on what they've heard. So this is all captured. And that's how that day would run itself. So you can imagine leading up to it is where we go from there. The kickoff meeting would start as soon as they've approved what we're doing. And you have to remember that the FDA is lockstep and involved in this process throughout the whole time, that they will monitor the meetings. So they're part of the meetings, and they can understand that with being part of all these meetings, they will have a full understanding of the priorities and what we want as a community. And that would end at the end of the day with the final meeting. But then after the meeting, a report is put together, and that report then gets signed off by both the patient community, that's us, I hate using the word, but that's what we are in the eyes of the FDA right now. But the community itself would look and agree to this, and they would then, the FDA would then sign off on it. And that would become somewhat of a guideline for understanding the priorities of people with spinal cord injuries. We have to understand that by doing this, the FDA would have a much clearer sense of what we're doing. Somebody referred to this process is much like the Anderson paper of 2004 on steroids. So I'd actually would agree with that, because what it is it's really doing a very exhaustive search of our community to really understand what our needs are in the current times. So we got to look at not just mobility anymore, and that's really formally where the FDA is right now. We have to look at all the other parts of our secondary complications, all the priorities of our community that we want to make sure that they are being addressed in research and development, and that there's an opportunity to commercialize any kind of product that would help people with spinal cord injuries based on those priorities. So that's it in a nutshell, what we're doing here. So if you go to the next slide, you'll see that this is what the agenda would look like on the day of the meeting. It'll be a very active day and very well organized at the end of it, based on many other examples that have been held since the inception of the PFDD process. Next slide. There are a couple of examples that I would urge people to look at if they want to have a better understanding. Sometimes just watching one, you'll get an idea of how it works. And you'll see the acronym is EL, means externally led. Just a minor note that the FDA, when they started the program and their pilots, they just were overwhelmed with so many conditions interested in it, and they didn't have the resources to do it. So what we have to do as a community is really lead it ourselves, but all in lockstep with the FDA, so that they're part of this and they have a complete understanding that this is what we want, and that it's in line with what they need to understand our community and the needs and priorities of our community. So if you go to the next slide, it really comes down to our call to action to you as a community and investors, is that we're trying to raise the funds to make this happen. Originally, we had numbers at over $500,000, but that number changed too, because we also look at the ability to go virtual with all of this. So right now we're in the process of trying to raise $180,000 to $200,000. The good news is that money is coming in. We have some soft commitments and some are hard. We're not there yet, but it's the type of program that as we develop the funds, we can get things done. And if for some reason we just can't get to that mark, the whole program stops. There's no risk from our end, because most of those things would be done at the end of the day. And if we don't have the funds to do it, then we just don't do it. But we're hopeful. We think we can get this done. We're asking the pharma community to be part of this. Obviously, there's some self-interest here with the investment of the pharmaceutical industry. They would only make their jobs easier and create a better opportunity and environment for their industry. And when it comes to investing in spinal cord injury and R&D, we really believe that this whole part could really change the face of investment into spinal cord research. And more importantly, it'll create opportunities and products and agents that would help people with spinal cord injuries in addressing our serious conditions and the secondary complications, which many people don't really understand. And I think it's important that we have that chance. And we'll do that by amplifying the patient voices. And we can really get the word out there of what we need. And it's really a unique opportunity to drive regulatory and industry awareness around lived realities of spinal cord injury. So if you go to the next slide, I really would urge everybody to download the QR code if you could. That QR code will take you to the white paper that I made reference to. It will also show you this presentation. I know you'll get it sent to you as well. And there's a one-pager that we use if you want to spread the word. We are doing a bunch of things here. We're asking for people to get involved and be part of it. We've created a steering committee that's still evolving right now. And that steering committee is representative of both industry, academia, clinicians, private and public researchers, as well as, more importantly, the community. We have many representatives from the community from different backgrounds, and or those representatives from organizations from different backgrounds. So between all of this, we think that we can bring this thing together. We've come a long way in a year just putting this white paper together. was quite the endeavor. And we want to thank all our friends that have done this to date. And we would like to thank Scope especially for getting this thing off the ground. But now we have some work ahead of us. And I really would like to urge all of you to really think of how you might want to be involved with this thing. And I urge you from industry for investment, anybody even from a private foundations, for example, we will accept those funds and really help us get to where we want. We are sharpening our pencils the best we can, but there are some basic needs that need to be paid for to get this thing off the ground and move forward. We're excited, and we think once we've received an LOI approval, then we were probably on the road to getting this thing done in very quick order. And the target date is still June of 2026 to get this done, but it might take a little longer, might take a little less, depending on our funding. So once again, I urge all of you as SCI investors to invest in this program. It'll only make all of our lives so much better. Thank you for your time, and I appreciate it. And if anybody's got any questions, feel free to contact me in my contact information below, as well as please download the QR code. Thank you.